Hello guys, this is your friend Itachi Fanfic 3.0 and we are back a new fanfic story which is What if Naruto had to choose between the crown and Hinata's life? Part 1. Let's start fanfic without wasting more time. The kingdom did not remember the day Naruto Uzumaki was born, but it would remember the day he chose to become king. He sat upon the throne not because gold loved him, nor because crowns were light upon his head, but because the world had leaned too heavily on his shoulders for too long. The throne was wide and carved with ancient faces, beasts and guardians from an age before memory, yet Naruto never felt smaller than he did at that moment. Power had a way of shrinking a man when it arrived too late to protect the things he once wanted most. Hinata stood beside him, closer than duty required, closer than protocol allowed. Her presence was quiet, steady, and warm, like a lantern that never flickered even when the wind was cruel. When she leaned forward and kissed him, it was not a kiss of celebration. It was a promise spoken without words. Naruto closed his eyes, because he had learned that sometimes looking directly at happiness made it fragile. He remembered a time when thrones did not exist in his thoughts. When hunger, loneliness, and stubborn hope were the only companions he trusted. Back then, the world was simple in its cruelty. You survived, or you did not. You were loved, or you learned how to live without it. Naruto had learned the second lesson before he learned the first. As a boy, he ran through streets that echoed with whispers. They did not shout at him. That would have been easier. They murmured instead, and murmurs sink deeper than screams. He grew up believing that if he ran fast enough, smiled wide enough, and shouted his dreams loudly enough, the world would eventually answer him. And one day, it did, but not in the way he had imagined. War came quietly, the way storms do when the sky is already dark. Kingdoms that once traded rice and stories began trading threats and blades. Alliances cracked under old resentments, and ancient powers stirred as if the earth itself had grown tired of peace. Naruto was no longer just a boy chasing recognition. He became a symbol others leaned on, even when he was still learning how to stand. Hinata watched him from a distance in those days, her faith unbroken even when his body and spirit were. She never asked him to be less reckless, never begged him to choose safety over sacrifice. Instead, she believed in the person he would become after the battle, not just the hero he was during it. That belief was heavier than armor and stronger than steel. When Naruto was offered the crown, he laughed. Not because it was funny, but because it was terrifying. A king could not run toward danger without consequence. A king could not gamble his life as if it belonged only to him. A king had to think of borders, of people who would never know his name but would feel the weight of every decision he made. Naruto had always been willing to die for the world. Living for it was far harder. The coronation was grand, but Naruto barely noticed. Gold reflected light into his eyes, and voices blended into a single hum. What he noticed was Hinata's hand tightening around his, grounding him. In that moment, he understood something vital. This crown was not a reward. It was a responsibility placed upon his heart. The early days of his reign were marked by resistance. Nobles questioned his lineage. Generals doubted his restraint. Foreign envoys smiled politely while measuring the distance between his borders and their ambitions. Naruto answered none of them with anger. He listened. He waited. And when he spoke with the calm of someone who had already lost everything once and refused to lose it again. Hinata became queen not through proclamation, but through presence. She listened when Naruto's confidence wavered late into the night. She spoke gently when his temper threatened to undo hours of diplomacy. Where Naruto burned bright and fast, Hinata endured. Together, they formed a balance the kingdom had never known. Yet peace is not a thing that arrives and stays. It must be held, shaped, and sometimes defended with painful choices. Rumors spread of a forgotten bloodline, one that claimed the throne before Naruto's ancestors ever drew breath. Whispers spoke of an army gathering beyond the mountains, led by a figure who believed destiny was a chain, not a choice. Naruto felt the familiar pull of conflict, the old instinct to rush forward and end it himself. But kings do not fight alone. Kings send others, and that truth cut deeper than any blade. As tensions rose, Naruto faced a question that haunted his nights. Could he protect the world without becoming the very thing he once despised? Power had already changed him. The crown was proof of that. What else would it demand before it was satisfied? Hinata sensed the storm inside him before it ever reached the borders. One evening, as the sun faded and the throne room emptied, she spoke softly about fear, not as weakness, but as awareness. She reminded him that love was not something that softened a king, it was something that sharpened his resolve. Naruto realized then that his greatest strength had never been his power. It had been his refusal to give up on people, even when they gave up on him. The enemy would come. That much was certain. The kingdom stood on the edge of a future that could either unite the world or tear it apart. And at the center of it all sat a king who was once a lonely boy, and a queen whose quiet courage held him together. This was only the beginning. The crown rested on Naruto's head, heavy with expectation. Hinata's presence remained at his side, unwavering. Beyond the walls, destiny gathered its forces, patient and cruel. And somewhere between love and duty, between hope and sacrifice, the true test of a king was about to begin. Night settled gently over the kingdom, but Naruto could not sleep. Kings were supposed to rest so they could decide the fate of thousands with clear minds in the morning. Yet sleep avoided him the way peace avoided the world, never gone, never fully present. He sat alone for a while, crown set aside, cloak loosened, just a man again. In the silence, memories grew louder. He remembered promises he had made as a child, promises spoken to the sky, to fallen friends, to himself. He had sworn to protect everyone. Back then, he did not understand how impossible that vow truly was. Now, wearing the weight of a nation, he understood it all too well. Hinata found him there without asking. She never announced herself. She never needed to. She did not speak immediately. She simply stood near him, close enough that he could feel her warmth. Naruto realized something frightening in that moment. Without her, the throne would feel like a prison. With her, it felt like a burden he could carry. "You're thinking too far ahead again," she finally said, her voice calm, not accusing. Naruto smiled faintly. "If I stop thinking ahead, people get hurt." Hinata shook her head gently. "If you think only ahead, you forget why you're moving forward." Her words stayed with him long after she left. The following days tested him in ways battle never had. Advisors argued over borders. Merchants demanded protection. Villages requested aid the treasury could not easily spare. Every decision helped some and disappointed others. Naruto learned that being king meant accepting that gratitude and resentment often arrived together. And then came the reports. An army was indeed forming beyond the mountains. Disciplined, silent, terrifyingly patient. Its leader was said to wear no crown, yet command loyalty through fear and prophecy. He believed the throne belonged to bloodlines, not choices. That Naruto's reign was an insult to destiny itself. Naruto felt anger rise, but he did not let it rule him. Instead of preparing for immediate war, he chose something unexpected: unity. He summoned leaders from neighboring lands, not as subjects, but as equals. He spoke not of conquest, but of survival. Not of power, but of consequence. Some laughed quietly. Some doubted openly. But others listened, because Naruto did not speak like a king raised in comfort. He spoke like someone who had known hunger, loss, and loneliness. Slowly, alliances formed. Not perfect, not complete, but real. Yet every alliance carried a price. One night, Naruto learned that to secure peace on one border, he would need to abandon intervention on another. A village, small, distant, and politically insignificant, would be left exposed. The old Naruto would have gone himself. The king Naruto could not. The decision haunted him. Hinata noticed the change immediately. Naruto grew quieter, heavier, as if every step pressed against his soul. When she finally asked him what was wrong, he did not answer right away. When he did, his voice was low. I chose numbers over names today. Hinata did not try to excuse it. She did not say it was necessary. She only reminded him of something he had once told her long ago, that a leader's pain was proof that their heart still worked. That night, Naruto understood that leadership was not about being unbreakable. It was about breaking quietly and still standing the next morning. The enemy moved sooner than expected. Not with soldiers, but with words. Messages arrived questioning Naruto's right to rule, spreading doubt among the people. Old fears resurfaced. Whispers grew louder. Naruto recognized this tactic. He had lived his entire childhood under it. The difference now was that the whispers were not about him alone, they threatened the stability of the entire kingdom. For the first time since taking the throne, Naruto felt fear, not of death, but of failure. He addressed the people himself. There were no grand speeches. No promises of victory. He spoke honestly. About his past, his mistakes, his doubts. He admitted he was not born a king. He told them he chose this path because he believed the world could be better than it was. Some cried. Some remained silent. But none could say he hid behind the crown. That night, as Naruto returned to the throne room, exhaustion finally overtook him. Hinata was already there, waiting. She leaned against him, and for a brief moment, the world felt still. But beyond the walls, fate continued to move. The enemy leader watched and waited, confident that Naruto's compassion would become his weakness. Confident that love, sooner or later, always demanded sacrifice. Naruto did not know it yet, but part 1 of his reign was drawing to its most dangerous turning point. Not with a battle, but with a choice that would redefine what kind of king he truly was. And once that choice was made, there would be no returning to the boy he once was.